This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Sylar 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, Kitsu the Kitsune, Chaos Enforcer, and brought to you by 212th Trooper, who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member, and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, you get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Now, before we get into today's story, I just want to ask you to do me a favor, hit that like button, since it tells YouTube you enjoy what I do, and check whether you're subscribed, since only about a quarter of my viewers are, and it's a free way to keep up to date with all my content. In return, I'll do all I can to keep making regular quality content for you. Thanks, and let's hop in. 2 weeks have passed since Destro Day, and both the heroes and MLA are still licking their wounds. Across the country, chaos reigns, as the true death toll is still unknown, while countless civilians are now unable to return home, go to work, or even contact family members, due to neither side allowing people into their territory, as that would be easy cover for covert attacks by their enemies. In an attempt to break this deadlock, delegates from both sides have begun holding talks, hoping that through communication they can reach a fair solution, though this is hampered by the fact that the Hero Commission's top brass were destroyed by Re-Destro the night before the battle, while the Supreme Commander himself is still MIA, meaning neither side has much authority through which to act. However, this all changes when a very familiar voice rings out from countless TVs across the country: Re-Destro. While his condition is unclear as he does not show his face, instead broadcasting audio over the symbol of the MLA, the fact that he is speaking at all proves that he is alive and active once again. In a tone of pride, he praises his subordinates for their efforts on Destro Day, claiming it was a historic victory, and one that has brought them closer than ever to liberating all of Japan, so they should stand by and await his signal, as it is almost time to finish what they started, and free this land from tyranny once and for all. As this rousing speech comes to an end, the broadcast cuts off, leaving Re-Destro standing alone in front of the microphone, though he is not left that way for long, as over a nearby computer, Curious sets to work masking their signals so the heroes cannot trace them back to the safe house, while Getten steps forward, using his quirk to reapply a series of floating ice blocks to his commander's skin. Even the few minutes Re-Destro had spent without them so he could make his address without chattering teeth had been agony, as the burns Endeavor left him with have hardly healed at all. In fact, were it not for his stress form, he would surely be dead, as it is only thanks to the transformation's increased strength and durability that he is still alive, though at the cost of not being able to revert to his regular body for even a second. What he would not give for an ally with a healing quirk right now. But unfortunately, even if such a person exists who is loyal to the cause, he is unable to seek them out, as presently he is the most wanted man in the country, with Curious and Getten being almost equally as notorious. Worse still, he is trapped in hero territory, as when Curious had spirited his unconscious body away in the wake of the battle, she had chosen to hide in the nearest safe house one of his shell company's owns, only to learn too late that their forces had failed to take this district, forcing them to lie low and bide their time while his wounds heal the old-fashioned way. However, while this is vexing, Re-Destro is not concerned, as his recent ordeals have made him stronger, so when the time comes to show himself and reignite the war, he shall prove himself a force to be reckoned with, the likes of which hero society has never seen before. Meanwhile, a few towns over, in an equally unremarkable house, a scene of carnage unfolds, as a trio of figures stride out of a portal that had suddenly appeared in the living room. As the first one through, Shigaraki wastes no time laying a hand on one of the inhabitants, a middle-aged woman, and turning her to dust in an instant. While making use of the confusion and anguish this sight causes, his two allies leap forward to grab the middle-aged man who'd been beside her, with Overhaul pinning his arms, while Stain levels a blade to his throat, and demands to know where Re-Destro is. In a haughty tone, the man questions why he'd ever tell villainous riffraff like them anything, though scowling deeply, Tomura barks at him to cut the hero crap, since he remembers it from Deka, so he can either tell them where his boss is, or Overhaul can make things very uncomfortable for him. In an attempt to prove this point, Chisaki reshapes his victim ever so slightly, not enough to impede his ability to talk, but certainly enough to cause immense pain, as he overhauls half the man's skin off his body, flaying him alive in an instant. Letting out a howling shriek of pain, the captive's composure breaks, as he pleads with them to let him go since he doesn't know anything, though this only makes Stain growl in disgust, as he states that he'd hoped the pro-hero Slide and Go wouldn't be a coward on top of being a hypocrite. Whimpering now as tears run haphazardly down his mostly fleshless face, Slide and Go continues to protest that he has no idea where Re-Destro is, clearly hoping that perhaps his captors will show him some mercy when they realize he is of no use to them. though evidently he does not know who he is dealing with. As in a cold tone, Chisaki sighs that he's useless like all the rest, with this being Tomora's cue to step forward and decay him too. Furiously, Stain snarls that Shigaraki had no right to do that, since the false hero was his to kill, though in a bored tone, the former league leader asks why it matters. Stain was gonna kill the guy and now he's dead, so there's no point getting worked up over a scrub like that when they still have the boss to deal with. Reluctantly, Chisaki agrees with Shigaraki, chiding Stain to keep his mind on the matter at hand, and seeing that he's outnumbered, the hero killer mutinously stows his blade and slinks back through Kurogiri's portal, with his two uneasy allies following close behind, as this house had been a bust like the last dozen they'd tried, so now they'll need to identify a new MLA officer who might know where their target is hiding. Though they're not the only ones looking for Re-Destro, as in the wake of his broadcast, the remnants of the Hero Commission along with any pros they can get their hands on have put their entire focus into tracking and neutralizing the Supreme Commander, since his return is the realization of their worst fears. Not only will it inspire the MLA forces in a way their side cannot match, considering their last two attempts at a new symbol of peace are dead and imprisoned respectively, but it may galvanize the liberationists to resume their campaign of conquest, as Re-Destro had suggested he would be giving an imminent signal to begin attacking once again. Admittedly, not everyone views this outcome with the same dread, as Bakugou in particular can't wait for Re-Destro to show himself so he can pay him back for killing his mentor, while Shoto feels a similar sense of duty to finish what his father started and ensure he did not die in vain. As for Izuku and Bruce, they do not waste time on either fear or anticipation, instead focusing on the logistics of what a Re-Destro resurgence would mean. To this end, when the Dark Knight is finally discharged from hospital, albeit with heavy casts and a cane, he calls his green-haired apprentice to meet him in the Batcave, as there is a matter they must discuss. Doing as bidden, Izuku wastes no time heading over to Wayne Tower, where he is greeted by Alfred, Eri, and surprisingly Jean, who has decided to hang around for a while, with the trio all expressing various degrees of relief that he is okay, and explaining that Dick and Ochako are currently out on patrol, suggesting that whatever Bruce has called him here for is only for the two of them. Recognizing the gravity of this, Izuku thanks them all and descends into the cave alone, where he finds Bruce seated at the bat computer, his brow furrowed, while the weight of countless difficult years and painful decisions shows on his face. Though the billionaire can hardly be considered a young man, as by now a streak of white bands the lower part of his hair and crow's feet line his eyes, this is the first time he has ever looked old to the green-haired youth, who begins to ask if he's alright, though feeling no need for small talk between them, Bruce assures him that he's fine, before beginning his speech he's clearly been rehearsing in his head. For a while now, he has known that Izuku is not like him. He's better, the kind of hero and the kind of man that both the best of Clark and All Might would be proud of. He has walked in the darkness and seen the worst of people, but not let it fill him with the same anger and need for control that has driven his, Bruce's, life. He is a true hero, and the one Japan needs right now, but not the one it deserves. So, if you will let him, he'd like to offer the boy a choice of two resources that should help him in the battles to come. At these words, lights burst into view, illuminating one of the many cases Bruce stores his batsuits in, though the one on display now is unlike any Izuku has seen before, pure black and completely streamlined, save for a crimson bat symbol on the chest. In a plain voice devoid of any self-aggrandizing, Bruce explains that this is Project Beyond, a prototype batsuit he initially designed to fight Superman, but has since constructed with help from Miss Hatsume and several others to serve as a countermeasure to this world's villains. While originally meant for himself, he would be honored if Izuku chose to take it in his stead. However, if he would rather follow in the footsteps of All Might, he does have an alternative gift, one that would not make him dependent on the suits and technology that were unable to save him from Re-Destro's wrath back in Deka. With this, a hermetically sealed tube rises from out of the desk, with Bruce explaining this is the hair All Might entrusted him with before his death, and which if consumed, should still be capable of passing on his quirk one for all. Thanks to his Batman training, Izuku should be capable of wielding the quirk without issue, possibly even reaching the same heights as the symbol of peace before too long. Not only physically, but as a beacon of hope, since he sees now that the boy is worthy in a way he never was. This is understandably a lot for Izuku to take in, with Bruce assuring him he does not need to choose now, simply that whichever resource he chooses, they are both at his disposal. A little numbly, the younger hero states that if it's alright he'd like to go away and think about it, maybe talk to Ochako and some of his friends, to which the Caped Crusader urges him to take his time and make the most of this lull in the action, since he is sure that when the time comes, Izuku will make the right choice. Nodding, the green-haired youth then turns to leave, though before stepping back into the lift he stops himself, and calmly states that he thinks his teacher is was wrong in one area of his assessment. It's not that he was never worthy, he simply lost the path, but he can see that Bruce has found it again. His actions against the MLA and especially in Deku proved that, so he wants him to know that no matter which choice he makes, the Dark Knight has regained his trust and his respect. Unfortunately, just because Izuku is willing to put his trust in Bruce once again does not mean everyone is, with it being for this reason that Ochako waits until now, when she is alone with Dick and out of the older man's earshot, to pose a question that has been weighing on her for the past 2 weeks. What did John mean by another Batgirl? Letting out a deep sigh, the acrobatics hero admits that he really wishes she'd ask Bruce or even Jean about this, since it's hard enough to think about it, let alone having to talk about her. But he's not going to lie to Ochako, so here's the truth. Back in his world, there was another hero who called herself Batgirl. She was brave and kind and smart, just like Ochako, and she died. Lowering her head slightly as the pain in Dick's voice makes it difficult to look him in the eye, the brunette asks if she was an ally, a friend, though cutting her off with a more clipped tone than he'd usually use. Dick states that she was his wife. For a moment, Ochako was at a loss for words, as if all the air has been sucked out of her lungs, though in contrast, now that the seal has been broken, Nightwing seemingly cannot stop himself from speaking, as he recounts how she was one of their allies in the fight against the Justice Lords, but during the war they were ambushed by Jean and 2 of the other lords. In the chaos, Babs told him to get help, though by the time he and Bruce returned, the others were already dead. Strange as it sounds, that might be the reason the 2 of them are still alive, not because they weren't there, but because the brutal killing of their former friends and allies was the wake-up call some of the lords like Jean needed not to follow Clark so blindly, and begin pushing for even just a little bit of mercy towards their enemies. So he guesses Babs saved his and Bruce's lives. He just wishes he could have done the same for her. Though she knows it is woefully inadequate, Ochako mutters that she's so sorry that happened to him, before asking if he'd like her to change her name, as if she knew it would dredge up so many painful memories she never would have. However, here Dick cuts her off once again, as he assures her she doesn't need to do that. If anything, he figures Babs would be happy to know there's another Batgirl out there helping people. Nodding solemnly, Ochako vows that she won't forget that, and she'll do everything in her power to bring honor to the mantle, with this earning something like a smile from Dick as he nods, then resumes their patrol. From here, things return to normal, with Ochako arriving back at Heights Alliance shortly before midnight, though to her surprise, she is not the only one still awake, as when she enters she finds Izuku seated in the common room, clearly deep in thought. Sitting down beside her friend, the brunette kindly asks what's on his mind, and having no secrets from her, the green-haired boy explains his dilemma, since it's more than just choosing between 2 gifts. It's a statement. If he takes the hair, he will become All Might's successor, something he could have only dreamed of back when he was a kid, but by doing it, it'd also kind of be validating the MLA, since his actions would show that he thinks he needs a powerful quirk to save the day. However, if he stays quirkless and takes the suit instead, there's a chance it won't be enough, since even Bruce and Endeavor couldn't beat Re-Destro, and if he fails, then not only will he be letting down everyone who's counting on him, but he runs the risk of letting Re-Destro achieve his ambition of taking over Japan. Seeing the stress this is putting him under, Ochako gently squeezes Izuku's hand, as she calmly asks what his heart tells him to do, since from experience she knows he has a good heart, and it won't lead him astray. From the kitchenette around the corner, another voice then interjects, factually pointing out that Midoriya's instincts are far from flawless, with Shoto stepping into view a moment later holding some packets sober. Still in that matter-of-fact tone, the burned boy admits that he did not intend to eavesdrop, but he couldn't help overhearing their conversation, and felt it pertinent to mention that it was Midoriya's advice to train with hawks that resulted in his kidnapping by the Metal Liberation Army. Blushing brightly, Izuku once again apologizes for that, though shaking his head, Shoto refutes that he didn't say that to offend, since there's no way the other boy could have known what would happen. He simply means that he should weigh the options rationally rather than acting on instinct. Curiously, Izuku asks what Shoto would do in his situation, to which the other boy answers that he understands the burden of an unwanted legacy quirk better than anyone, but as Midoriya told him during the sports festival, the only thing that defines a quirk is how he uses it, so even if it looks like a tacit endorsement of the MLA's ideology, he would suggest taking All Might's power if it gives him the highest chance of defeating Re-Destro. However, it seems not everyone agrees, as coming in from some late night training in preparation for the day he pounds Re-Dipshit's face into hamburger meat, Bakugou barks that Icy Hot's full of crap like usual. While he hates to admit it, Deku's come a long way without a quirk, so if he gives up now and takes a handout, what was the point of all his hard work? Better to live and die by his own strength than use something that's not even his, which is a principle Deku ought to understand, unless he's even more of a pansy ass than he thinks he is. Despite the harshness of this critique, Izuku smiles softly as he first thanks Kachan and then Shoto and Ochako, stating he appreciates their advice and that they've given him plenty to think about. Elsewhere, another group are locked in a far more fierce debate as Chisaki, Shigaraki and Stain stand over the badly beaten body of a Detnerat procurement clerk. Unlike many of the employees working for Re-Destro, this poor bastard had not been a member of the MLA, but he had been the one who purchased most of their safe houses around the country, making him a prime candidate for torture. As a regular man, he had folded instantly and given the Dark Triumvirate the full record of his transactions, with this giving them a pretty good idea where Re-Destro must be hiding out. Though the question remains, what to do with this guy? As it is the most pragmatic solution since they have no need for him any longer, Chisaki is in favor of killing him, as this also ties up an unnecessary loose end, though in contrast, Stain finds the idea beneath him, calling it a pointless murder, as this man has committed no crime against his ideology worthy of death. As for Shigaraki, he doesn't care, having absented himself from the discussion to go through the list of properties, since now they have the haystack, they need to find that Neil. And it seems he will have plenty of time, as the other two are caught in something of an impasse, with Stain growing increasingly heated, while Chisaki grows more terse and frustrated, especially since he clearly does not care as much as the hero killer, but to back down would be an act of submission that he is unwilling to perform when the trio's power dynamic is still largely unclear. Evidently, Stain is of the same mind, even if he has not consciously realized it beneath his ideological objection, refusing to even inch so that the pair wind up going around in circles, until Kurogiri interjects, and points out the decision has seemingly been made for them, as it appears the gentleman died of his injuries while they were arguing. This is a perversely acceptable compromise to the pair, as Chisaki gets his clean break, while Stain remains free of hypocrisy, with them both turning to Tomura to ask what he's learned. Giving them a look that clearly conveys his contempt for both of them, Shigaraki reveals that he thinks he's found that rat bastard's hidey hole, since of all the properties he's looked into, only one is within walking or driving distance of Deka, and considering Stain had already taken Kurogiri by the time Re-Destro was injured, whoever rescued him couldn't have lugged his beaten-ass body too far, making this the only real option. In a sardonic tone, Chisaki expresses pleasant surprise that Tomura actually has a brain underneath that hideous mop of hair. While keeping his eyes on the prize, Stain orders Kurogiri to make them another warp gate, since it's time they pay their good buddy Re-Destro a visit. Here at least, all three villains agree, with the trio following Kurogiri through the portal and reappearing in the living room of the safe house. This disturbance is not lost on its inhabitants, as Getten and Curious are quick to approach, both are taking up combat positions, though here Kurogiri proves his utility once again, warping them away and clearing the path to Re-Destro. However, what they see when they enter the room Curious and Getten had just vacated is not Re-Destro, or at least not any version of him they have seen before, as his ogre form is mutated, now being marred by scaly scabs and a collection of calcified horns that have erupted across his body, with the most notable being the tusk-like set on and around his chin and brow. As for his skin, it has changed from its murky modelling into an almost ash grey, while his receding hairline has finally given up the ghost, leaving him entirely bald on top, with what hair now hangs past his ears having turned white from stress. Were it not for his distinctly pointed nose and shrewd rat-like eyes, the villains might not have recognized him, with Shigaraki quipping that he looks like shit, though feeling no desire to trade barbs with the brat his followers defeated once before. The Supreme Commander rumbles that the League brat would have been wiser to stay in his ice prison, before rising to his feet in preparation for the fight ahead. Seeing that the time for talking is over, both Shigaraki and Stain charge at their foe, evidently intent on claiming the kill, though it seems appearance is not the only way in which Re-Destro has changed, as laying his massive hands on the floor, he discharges stress into the foundation, causing the ground to crack and buckle, as spikes of foundation burst upwards to skewer the attackers. Fortunately, Chisaki is there to remedy this, planting his own hands on the ground and overhauling the terrain back to normal, though it is clear this was a close call, as Re-Destro questions how they like his new quirk awakening, since now he can channel the stress he has accumulated into his environment, and thanks to his injuries, his body is under constant stress. In a turn of disgust, Chisaki sneers that he shouldn't be surprised Re-Destro found a way to spread his sickness beyond himself. That's what cancers do after all. Though, all the same, he continues to hang back, overhauling a nearby chair into a spear that he hurls at the monster, allowing Shigaraki and Stain to regain their bearings and continue their charge. Had the trio taken any time to coordinate, this might have been a devastating combo. Though as they are now, three individuals in it for themselves, their joint attack fails to fully capitalize, with a spear bouncing off Re-Destro's concrete-like hide, while a single sweep of his long arm knocks the two frontline fighters back, since both chose to engage in a frontal assault. Being more familiar with direct combat than Shigaraki is, Stain is back on his feet first, and making use of this, he charges alone and swings his katana down on the Supreme Commander's forearm, only for the blade to shatter into pieces against a far more durable foe. Meanwhile, having taken off a few seconds behind the hero killer, Shigaraki bellows at him to move, since he's blocking his shot at decaying the big bastard. Though recognizing that Stain isn't going to be able to get out of the way in time, Chisaki creates a ramp, allowing Tomura to jump over his ally's head and go right for Re-Destro's face. This is a clever strategy, at least in theory, as in practice the sudden shift briefly throws off Shigaraki's stride. While there's only for a fraction of a second, that is all their common enemy needs to react, as before the former league leader can leap, Re-Destro's monstrous hand closes around his chest. Then, a moment later, blood bursts from Tomura's mouth, as the sudden influx of stress on his organs ruptures them in quick succession, so that he is dead before the ML commander has finished tossing him aside. At once, something happens that neither Stain nor Chisaki had anticipated. Kurogiri goes inert, as with his master gone, he no longer has a function. Though neither of the remaining attackers have any reason to mourn Tomura, the knowledge that they have lost their only escape route does fill their stomachs with dread, as now they have no means to regroup and form a new plan. Meaning, like it or not, this is their one and only chance to kill Re-Destro. In contrast, the Supreme Commander smirks, as he next tries to reach for Chisaki, deeming him the closest thing to a threat left, as his overhaul power, if used in tandem with Stain, could create an opening to actually hurt him. Though refusing to die like Tomura just did, the Yakuza boss pulls out his trump card, overhauling the entire building into a meteor that he attempts to drop on Re-Destro's head, since even the most durable hide would be crushed into 300,000 pounds of concrete, wood, and glass. Recognizing that he will be crushed too if he does not move, Stain desperately leaps out of the way. Though remaining where he is, Re-Destro simply looks up and unleashes one of his darkness blasts that far eclipses the ones he used against the Commissioner on Destro Day. Briefly, this creates a stalemate, as the Supreme Commander's beam struggles to cut through the falling ball of debris, while also holding it aloft. Though, after a few moments, the damage begins to show, so that before Stain or Chisaki can press the attack, the orb explodes with a thunderous crack that sends a shockwave rippling out through the entire district. All around them, dust and debris rains down in choking sheets, and at the center of it all, Re-Destro's smirk only grows as he turns his cold eyes back to his victims. Elsewhere, countless alarms, both literal and figurative, go off, as the news of the darkness blast is passed from eyewitnesses to the various hero agencies around the country, confirming the dreadful news that Re-Destro is back, and in fighting shape. Though this is not the full extent of the hero's problem, as the news of Re-Destro's return and very public display of power does not take long to reach the MLA territories, will all agree that this must be the signal to attack the Supreme Commander had spoken of. As a result, hordes of MLA fighters swarm over the boundaries between their territory and the heroes, forcing any pros who are still capable of fighting to leap into action as they attempt to hold the invaders at bay. Such is the extent of the crisis that Aizawa and the other teachers make their way into the dorms to rally the students, since they need all hands on deck for this counter-offensive. Though, looking between each other, Izuku, Ochako, Shoto, and Bakugou all clearly have the same thought. If everyone's rushing to push back the MLA forces, who's going to handle Re-Destro? Refusing to let the man who killed their mentor and father respectively get away when he's in their sights, both Bakugou and Shoto declare their intent to head for the blast point, with Ochako agreeing to back them up, since she has experience fighting bulky monsters like him that could come in handy. As for Izuku, he likewise states his desire to confront the Supreme Commander and end this war, though he'll have to follow behind them, since he needs to head to Wayne Tower first. With their plan in place, the group split up, with Shoto, Bakugou, and Ochako each using their assorted methods of flight to cross the distance as quickly as they can. Luckily for them, Re-Destro is still here when they arrive, having taken his time to dispatch Chisaki and Stain, both of whom now lie beaten and unconscious on the ground. Though, as he spots his three new challengers, the Supreme Commander curiously asks who they are, as while he knows young Todoroki, he has not seen the other two heroes before. As the most hot-headed of the group, Bakugou cannot resist this bait, as in a tone of deepest loathing he roars that his name's Sir Dynamite, he's gonna blow the bald bastard to kingdom come for what he did to his teacher. Unfortunately, it seems he will not get the chance, since just as he begins propelling himself towards Re-Destro, he is blindsided by a hail of exploding ice that knocks him out of the sky, while Shoto and Ochako turn to see Getten and Curious flying towards them on a frozen platform. Recognizing he's the best suited to handle this threat, Shoto grunts that he'll deal with the ice user. While getting back to his feet, Bakugou growls that he'll take the explosion bitch. Unfortunately, this does leave Ochako with the unenviable task of confronting Re-Destro alone. Though knowing she just needs to buy time till Izuku gets here, she swallows her fear and steps forward to fight. Evidently not seeing the girl as worthy of his full attention since he already crippled the superior bat, so he has no need to be concerned with the knockoff. The Supreme Commander attempts to finish her off with another of his darkness blasts. Though demonstrating a proficiency with her grapplers, Ochako launches herself skyward, avoiding the attack and then coming down for a spin kick that leaves the faintest of scuffs on the monster's grey cheek. However, a scuff is far from a decisive blow, as lashing out with his hand, Re-Destro sends her flying. Thankfully, she's able to mitigate some of this damage by anchoring herself to the ground, so that while her landing isn't soft, it is at least not as bone-breaking as it otherwise might have been. Though, this comes at the cost of making her a stationary target, a fact Re-Destro is quick to capitalize on, as he plants his hands on the ground and watches as it erupts once again, with several spikes slicing deep into her suit and leaving painful trails of blood in their wake. Now all that remains is to finish the girl and move on to those troublesome boys, with Re-Destro raising both hands above his head for a hammer blow that should reduce Ochako to a red smear upon the floor, only for a deep roaring sound to draw his attention as he is suddenly bathed in harsh light. Turning in the direction of this distraction, he sees a sleek black vehicle burst into view, with it using the cracked ground like a ramp to soar at him like a missile. Making use of his quick wit and immense strength, the Supreme Commander is able to catch this before it strikes him, though this requires both hands, allowing Ochako to get herself safely out of range, while from the top of the Batmobile, a figure leaps forth and lands in front of her, as he apologizes for taking so long. Staring up at him, the brunette can hardly believe that she is looking at Izuku, as the strength and surety radiating from him is unlike anything she has seen from her friend before. Though right now, he only has eyes for Re-Destro, since it's time to end this. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.